Welcome to another episode of the Art and Science of Leadership podcast. And I am pleased to be joined today by a dear friend, but also an incredibly accomplished human being who I have the most admiration and respect for, Dr. Kunal Parikh. He is a 30 under 30 Forbes healthcare alum. He is currently on the faculty at Johns Hopkins University in their CBID group, which is the Center for Bioengineering, Innovation, and Design. He is a several times over entrepreneur in the healthcare space. He's the co-founder of the Social Innovation Lab at Johns Hopkins University. I could go on and on. I think what you're picking up, everyone, is that this is someone that is really doing good for the world, and I'm just so pleased to be able to call him a friend, and even more pleased that you all get to hear some of our exchange today. But Kunal is first and foremost interested in tackling some of the world's greatest health challenges. And that is why there's just so much of what he will share with us today as we're talking that hopefully inspires you. You'll pick something up from our conversation that is useful to you as a leader. But we just hope that you enjoy some of our exchange. But my friend, thank you for being with me, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm saying no to as many things as I can nowadays. But you're one of the few people that's on a list of folks that I can't say no to. So I'm very excited to spend time with you as always.
You're very kind, and right off the bat, there you are creating value for anybody that's listening. One of the things that I talk to CEOs and entrepreneurs about all the time, Kunal, is you have to be essential. You have to only do what only you can do, and there you go, straight away, giving us something that we can really hang our hat on, which is saying no to more things. Do you have a way that you're able to do that effectively?
In terms of how to say no in a nice way, essentially.
Yeah.
I've learned quite a bit from Tim Ferriss and others. Most of the people I think I've learned from on personal development, James Clear, others. It's always been, hey, like I'm very honored, I'm grateful that you would think of me, that you would involve me, but I have some commitments right now that I need to make sure I follow through on. I think that's. I remember I was judging a business plan competition a few years ago, and it occurred to me that I was spending a whole day judging the Hopkins business plan competition. That I was doing a disservice to myself, my team, the things I was working on that can go and have a big impact by not spending 12 hours on those things. And on some of these things, which are of course very useful and worthwhile, but may not be the most important. So I think for me, it's really about what am I doing that's within my mission, and what's the 20% of things that I can uniquely spend my time on or contribute to that are going to lead to the best outcomes for the world, and then really just being as focused as I can on those. And there's so many opportunities, especially a great place like Hopkins, in Baltimore. And so I've been very grateful for that. And I think in my life, even there are phases where I found it's great to say yes to everything. There are other phases where you want to say no to everything. And so right now is one of those times where, I'm really grateful for some of the opportunities that are in front of me to, develop myself and to achieve the vision I have for the world around me. And so I'm obligated to do my best for making those things a reality.
Thank you, Kunal. So well stated, and really appreciate that wisdom and that perspective. It goes right to the heart of what the kind of value that I want to create through a conversation like this. And so let's pick up on your vision there.
Yeah.
What are a few things that we should know that you would want us to know about some of that vision and that work that you're currently working on that would be really helpful for us to understand?
Yeah. So maybe just some context. So when I graduated from high school, I was actually planning on becoming a monk. And I was very intentional about, not necessarily driving a Hummer around Silicon Valley or, being in the material world here, but, thinking about paths to liberate my inner self and to advance my inner self. And I remember going to a monastery and speaking with many of the monks there in India. And one of the things I asked them was, I could become a monk 10 years from now, 15 years from now, but others had invested a lot in my development. And similarly, I'd worked very hard up to that point. And I asked them, okay, if I'm not going to become a monk immediately right now, what should my purpose be? And it was fascinating. The only thing in my entire time there that they said to me in English was, your purpose should be to serve others and nothing else. And so, that was, as a 17-year-old, that was so powerful for me. When many are sort of looking kind of what is their purpose? What should I be doing? What major should I be, focusing on? That was so powerful for me. So really the next, especially 4 or 5 years was iterating on what's the best path, the best vehicle for me to have that impact. Where should I be looking to have that sort of impact? And then really the last 10 years have been about just making that a reality. And so, one of the things that was very powerful for me was that initiated a journey for me to think about how should I spend my time? What are the things that are worth me using my one life that I have here to do? Because I'm not going to take any money with me. I'm not going to take any research. It's really about what's the value I can provide during the lifetime, the precious lifetime that I have. And so very quickly for me, it came down to health. And I really think that when you think about how to enable, people around the world, I think it starts with health. How do you make sure people live past their, first 5 years? And then I think it's, things like how do you give them access to education? How do you get people out of poverty? But to me, health is the keystone for people to eventually be able to self-actualize. And as I went through, I started a nonprofit, I started a for-profit, and I did research at Ohio State. And so as I went through all of those kind of things, it really helped me to hone in on, for me, the goal is really how do I create a world where nobody's limited by the circumstances of their birth? And, for me, I didn't grow up with, a lot of resources or wealth or a background of education. And so to me, that's the thing that always, I feel very deeply, that there are so many people around the world who may be just as talented, just as smart, even more than me. But, I've been very lucky to have opportunities that many of them may not have. And so how do I create a world where that isn't the case? And to me, that starts with healthcare. And even right now, there's clear disparities in healthcare. I think the pandemic helped to sort of highlight the challenges as it relates to healthcare around the world. And so just like not everyone has, equal opportunity, no one has equal opportunity for health either. And so if we really think of that as sort of the keystone for people to be able to self-actualize, for people to be productive, for people to be happy, for people to be fulfilled, to me, that's kind of where it starts. And so really all of my work now focuses on how do we think about improving health outcomes. And so much of my work now, just, to help to finish kind of where we are now, is much of my work now is how do we create new medical devices? How do we create new therapeutics that can really address these major unmet healthcare needs? But how do we do that in a way where we can make sure that those solutions, if they're impactful, if they work, that they actually get to the people who need them the most, not just the people who can afford to pay for them. And so that's been, I think, the driving theme of my career to date. And that's really kind of where I want to have my impact right now, is how do we not only solve these kind of major challenges, leveraging technology. I think technology is the one lever that you can pull. I mean, the healthcare infrastructure will continue to cost more. People will continue to cost more. There's more regulation. There's more, all these sort of bureaucratic challenges. But I think the one lever you can pull to improve outcomes, improve efficiency, lower costs, it's technology. And so thinking about how we can really leverage technology to transform outcomes, to transform how we care for these different conditions, or in many cases provide treatments where there aren't any good treatments right now. To me, that's really the key focus, but make sure we're doing that in a way that's equitable. And it's not that we're developing something now that'll take 40 years to get to the rest of the world, but that we can develop pathways now that can enable access to anyone who needs it wherever they are. So there's been a lot of thinking not only about technological innovation, but also financial innovation, business model innovation. The last year of my Ph.D., I spent a lot of time just thinking through that, because there's lots of cases of people who have taken technologies that already exist, and then 20, 30 years later, how do we bring down the cost? How do we make them more affordable? How do we put manufacturing in a place where where maybe that there isn't access right now? But there really aren't great case studies of people who have been developing novel technologies, things where there's going to be IP, things where there's higher risk, things where there's high investment to develop those technologies in the first place, but then also who are developing models and pathways for those to become accessible immediately around the world where there is a need. And so, about half of my work, or a little bit more than half of my work, focuses all on ophthalmology and really thinking through the question of how do we eliminate avoidable blindness around the world. The majority of which disproportionately is in low and middle income countries. And you can think about, in some of those cases, I mean, if you don't have vision, that's, I'm not going to be able to study. I'm not going to be able to learn. I'm not going to be able to have a job. I'm not going to be able to take care of my family. It's the opposite, where people are going to have to take care of me. I may be a burden for other folks. And so really thinking about, and I mean, that's an easy way to affect your quality of life, your mental health, your physical health, even your mortality. You're more likely, your life expectancy is likely to be shorter. And so thinking about how do we especially provide access to care, if 80-90% of eye disease is really in low middle income countries, those patients are different. The context of care is different. The doctors are different. The eye care systems are different. So how do we really think about what are the solutions that are uniquely needed for those environments, and make sure that those innovations are able to be brought to market in an accessible and affordable manner. So I don't know if I answered all of the questions that you wanted me to answer, or if I answered a different question altogether. But, for me, just to, I think that the two things I would take away from that are, one, I think healthcare is fundamental for us to be able to fulfill, our purpose as human beings and to be self-actualized. And unfortunately, access to healthcare, just like access to opportunity in general, is not equitable. And so really thinking about how we can leverage technology, which can be transformative, but to leverage it in an equitable way where we're able to solve, the biggest problems in healthcare for the people who suffer the most or who are most vulnerable. That's really kind of the focus of mine.
No, that's a remarkable context for us to understand more fully. I love the confluence of innovation and equity, and then the business model, because much of what I kept thinking about as you were sharing that with us is you're really trying to solve a business problem. Certainly a social problem, but also the access part. There is a logistical blocking and tackling challenge that comes with getting new technology into the hands of those that need it most. And that's a fundamental business problem in addition to solving a social challenge.
So one day hopefully we'll have enough funding to consult with you to help us figure that out.
That's right.
But in the meantime, we're doing our best.
Yeah. You know what I think about, Kunal, when I hear you speak so passionately and so intentionally about this? I'm reminded of the Picasso quote, which is, the meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to give it away.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel when I think about the work that you've done since I've known you. It's been that. It's been so true to that. So let me use that as a jumping point to my next question, which is, you have been a founder or partner in multiple businesses in your young career. What are those things that stay with you that you've been able to pull through from each of those experiences that you've learned about effective leadership?
Yeah. I think one of them is simply to be the kind of person that people want to work with. I think fundamentally so much of being successful in life and business comes down to that. Are you the kind of person that people want to work with? Are you kind? Are you mission driven? Do you have integrity? Do you work hard? And these are also all the things that are fully in your control, that don't cost you $1. You don't need to go to a training to figure out how to work hard. And so to me, I think that's the one thing that has transcended. I think, I asked myself, maybe 2 years ago, I was almost a little confused that, there were so many opportunities that were sort of coming my way. And why was that? And I even asked myself this question: why do people want to work with me in the first place? But I think so much of it comes down to that. I mean, even in your work, even if you're thinking about clients or partners, I mean, even if there's a client that's paying you, you'd much rather work with a client that you care about, that's easy to work with, that's kind, that that you're going to help them. They're going to do great things with the help, with the support, with the guidance that you provide them. So I think fundamentally, almost every aspect of life is improved if you think about it from the other person's perspective. And how can I be the kind of person this person wants to work with, that provides value, that can be supportive? So to me, that's number one. It's as simple as that. It's just being the kind of person that people want to work with. And then, to be honest, a lot of, the first things I learned about leadership were really from, Dale Carnegie and, Jim Collins. And so, I was thinking about this in advance of this, but in my life, I have never said that I wanted to be a leader. I've never been intentional, like I want to be a leader. I've also it was never a dream or a goal of mine to start a company, ever. Those were never two things I said, these are things I want to be or I want to be known as. That's never been the case. But I was very lucky that somehow, after I graduated from high school, that same summer I went to India to explore becoming a monk. Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, fell into my lap. And it just opened my eyes to a world of personal development, self-development, but also how to interact with other people, how to lead other people. And so, the two things that always stayed in my mind there were, how important people's names are, and just being kind, and being enabling. And, there's never a reason to have an argument. The other piece that always stayed with me from Jim Collins was, a level 5 leader, right? And so the two qualities, that extreme humility and extreme willpower. And so, to be honest, I think those are the bits of wisdom and, things that I've sort of carried along with me that have been powerful all across the board. And I think, the other thing that's interesting, and we'll talk about mindset, in a little bit, but for me, thinking back and reflecting on that, I never had any intention of starting a company or being a leader. But what motivated me in both of those cases was there became a mission that was stronger and bigger than me, and that I was dedicated or committed to, achieving or realizing, or there was a problem that was worth solving, that I wanted to make sure was solved. And so in order for me to solve that problem, in order for us to have the impact that we wanted to have, those were the pathway. I had to be a leader. I had to figure out how to bring resources and people and organization together to achieve or solve that problem. Or it was a company that was the right vehicle, right? Like a startup, whether it's a 501c3, a C Corp. And so I think those are, collectively, those are a few of the things that for me have been very powerful as I think about leadership, as I think about, these sort of different ventures and just working well with people. I also, the other unique thing I'll say that I've come to a realization during the pandemic was, I think companies are often vehicles. We say they're a vehicle for making money, but I think they're often, vehicles for many other things, like just spending more time with the people that you want to spend time with, right? So let's say if we had an opportunity to build a company together, I'm sure we'd come up with something fantastic. I'm sure we have a service that would be useful and profitable, but it would be as much for me about doing that and providing that service as it would be, here's an opportunity where I get to spend more time with Chris. I get to learn more from him. We get to interact and build something together. And so I think even just for personal development, I think companies are fantastic vehicles for personal development. Even if there's no ROI, there's no return on investment, that company fails. The first company I started, probably for 9 months, I was sleeping 2 hours a night, Monday through Friday. And I probably sacrificed my health in ways that I'm not very happy about now. But at that time, I learned so much so quickly that really sort of compounded, over time since then. And so I think that's the other thing that has become really important for me to realize is that companies really aren't always just about, that bottom line or the service or the product. It's really a vehicle for many other things.
Yeah. You are giving us so much to really ruminate on and to learn from. And it's just the question that comes up to me, it's almost more rhetorical than anything else, is why are so many leaders afraid to take on that cloak of thinking of think about the kind of person you want to be. How do you want to spend your time? Who do you want to surround yourself with? Do you want to do something that's bigger than yourself? And it's amazing how much friction, Kunal, there still is in the world, that we're not pursuing those things. You referenced, your spiritual journey, coinciding with Carnegie and Collins. These are timeless aspects of humanity and leadership that we can avail ourselves of. They're right there. You can make that choice, yet so many people keep those choices at arm's length, and it still fascinates me to this day. And believe me, I know it's not a new problem. This is millennia old challenge, but it's just a fascinating thing, which is, I think, a wonderful way to consider the next question, which is, as you're building teams, and you're building teams that are mission focused, that believe in one another, that like to be around each other, that are really set on the goal and set on a great mission. Some element of that is the science part, which is this mindset. And you mentioned James Clear earlier, which is one of the most important books of the last decade. But it's this idea that you actually can develop your mindset. You can improve your mindset. The habits that you create are tied into our neural network and our ability to rewire the way we think about things. And so when you see and you think about mindset, the mindset of your teams and the mindset that you look for as you're building a team, what are
Yeah.
some of the things that you could share with us about that?
Sure.
Even the juxtaposition of the individual mindset and that collective mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one thing I'll just state before that is, when we were thinking about, hey, we have all this wisdom, we have all this knowledge, and why aren't we implementing many of these things? I think one of the unique transformative moments in my life and what I've seen in others, especially young folks, has been the moment when you realize that you are in control of these things. Like, I can control my self-development. I can control the influence I have on others and on the world around me, rather than just being a passive agent and in the system. In the system, I think that's a really transformative. I think that's what Dale Carnegie's book did for me, was that I'm not just sort of going through life, but I can control how I develop myself, how I interact with other people, and the path that I take in life. And so I think that's a very transformative, at least was for me. And I've seen that countless times with others that I've mentored or helped to develop. Is just that understanding. And as it relates to, to developing teams and building teams and qualities that I look for, Naval Ravikant has a quote I really liked about hiring people. He said, you want to find people who are high energy, who are high intelligence, and who are long-term thinking. And so I really appreciate that quite a bit. And, you want to find people that are high energy, like they're excited about what they're doing. They're going to get a lot done. But of course, if they don't have high intelligence, then they're going to just be doing lots of crazy things all day long. And so you want to find people. But then, of course, you can have very smart people that don't get anything done. And so I absolutely agree with those. And for me, the other two things I really look for are integrity. Are you someone that I can trust? You're going to say what you're going to do, and you're going to back it up, and I'm going to do the same. And, there's never a question about, am I going to take advantage of, this person, or vice versa. I've seen many teams previously where that's always in the background. And I think that leads to incredibly ineffective team. It's an easy way to kill a team, is when you don't have that fundamental trust that this is a person of integrity that I'm working with. We're always going to find the best way for the company to do well, the organization to do well, and we're going to look out for each other all the time. The other big thing I look for is curiosity. And so just, willingness to learn, just be excited, because there's no business plan that anyone has ever laid out that went exactly to plan. Right. And so you've got to do experiments. You've got to learn from those experiments. You've got to be excited to learn from those experiments, and then take those learnings, turn them into new hypotheses. And so I think people who are actively curious about that, who have a higher rate of doing those experiments and then turning those experiments into new experiments, I think those are the ones who succeed at the end of the day. And so I think that curiosity is a big piece of it. And then I think people who are coachable, of course, is another piece. And so if you're genuinely willing to take feedback, willing to improve, and actually inspired to improve, I think it makes everything that much easier, as a team. I think those are some of the sort of main qualities I would say have been the most important.
That's all right on point, brother. I appreciate the eloquence and the clarity with which you stated that, and I want to underscore that so clearly. As I was listening to you, I was thinking about my own mashup of a little bit of Lencioni and a little bit of Collins, right? With the hungry, humble, and smart, which is sort of lines up with your first few elements of your mindset, and it's just so critical. It's so critical when you're surrounded by the right people and the right energy, and that permanent beta idea, right? The idea that we're always learning, we're never done. What can't you do? What can't you do? Yeah. And I really appreciate your perspective on that.
The other, if I can add one thing,
please.
It's fun to have this this isn't a conversation I get to have often, and so it's very powerful, even in my own thinking and reviewing my own how do I improve myself. But one thing that I think is very important as well, and if you can detach those individual egos, but if there's an organizational ego, I think that can be very powerful. Right. So it's not about my idea or me getting recognition, but then as a group, as an organization, as a company, having an ego about, we are going to do this. We are going to solve this problem. We are going to have this sort of impact. I think that can be very powerful. I think within a team, and Jim Collins kind of talked through this in terms of extreme humility, in terms of both leaders and the team. I think that can be very powerful. And then as you translate that to the organization, I think oftentimes it's tough to have organizations that don't, like, the organization doesn't have ego as a whole, because I think to some degree you want people incentivized. You want them to feel attached to the company and its success and the organization. And so, but I think that's the opposite of what you want individually. And so it's not a realization I've had before, but it's something that you've sort of inspired today for me to think about.
Well, I'm glad we did, because I love that. I love that concept, man. I've never put that together in terms of an organizational ego being that healthy alternative, if you will,
Yeah.
to the individual ego driving from a leadership perspective. So there is a lot to consider there, and I'm so glad that you put that out into the world, so we can kick that around, because that is something worth understanding better. And I'm certainly going to be exploring
Yeah.
it further as
I'll have to
well. And I
think
know
about that more too. Yeah.
you and I will talk about that further for sure.
Yeah.
Kunal Parikh, Dr. Kunal Parikh, we are so grateful for you sharing your insights and perspective and wisdom and care and joy and peace and all the things that you bring to this world. We're really grateful for you, my friend. And I know that our listeners will be able to glean so much from this conversation and take back to build better organizations and build a better world. So thank
Yeah.
you, my friend.
Beautiful. Thank you. Just one note I'll say is that I've learned a lot in my life, not necessarily through, just reading or, taking a class, but I've learned a lot just from watching people, and just like every interaction, I'm meticulous. I'm saying, how does this person interact with this person? How does this person approach this? And so you're one of the people that I've benefited from watching and seeing. And so oftentimes people don't know this, how much they've taught me, how much I've learned from them, how much I've benefited from them. Because I just kind of watch and learn and pick up things here and there. But you're definitely one of those people that I've gained a lot from watching and seeing, even from the sidelines. So I'm very grateful for your role as a model there for me.
Well, thank you, brother, for saying that.
Yeah.
It means everything to me, as you know. So I treasure our friendship. I treasure your place in this world and your influence on this world. So thank you, my friend.
Yeah. Thank you. And likewise.